Hi everyone, this is Sarah Michel with another weekly challenge to God, my weekly session of blasphemy and heresy, where I challenge God directly to provide any evidence that He in fact exists. And today I will talk about knowledge. That is one of the primordial questions of philosophy, not only of epistemology, but of philosophy as a whole. What it means to say that we know something. How can we say it? How can we sufficiently say that we have knowledge about something? Now, it's important, I think, before getting into that definition, to understand there are different types of knowledge. And what I'm going to talk about here is very specific about one type of it. I'm not talking, for example, about knowledge on how to do things, which we could also call it ability of something. For example, what I'm trying to say here, beavers have an innate ability to build dams. Some birds have the innate ability to build nests. Now, some might argue that humans, that's what Chomsky argued, have some innate abilities related to language. I would also argue that humans have an innate ability to walk and other primary motor skills, that we simply know how to do it without being taught. It's something that is probably imprinted in our brains. So this is not what I'm talking about here. This knowledge about how to do things. For example, knowledge about how to play an instrument is not either the topic of this video. It's not this type of knowledge that I'm talking about. I'm talking what is often referred to as knowledge that, or knowledge about things. How do we know about something? How can we sufficiently say that the information that we have about something is, in fact, knowledge? One important distinction that needs to be made is the difference between observational and conceptual knowledge. I think that is closely related to the difference between analytical and synthetic propositions as a Kantian distinction, which I agree with. Now, conceptual knowledge and observational knowledge are knowledge about different things. Now, observational knowledge is about knowledge about claims of reality, and in a way, I would argue that is regarding it's related to synthetic propositions. Is when the concept, when you're not learning, when you're learning something about that exists in reality, that is not inside its own concept. You are discovering things about reality. In the case of conceptual knowledge, you are simply learning things about a concept. Now, the thing about concepts is that, and that is something that I argue, all concepts are human creations. Concepts doesn't exist outside of human minds. And I think Kant does agree with that. I am not completely sure about that, but I think he does. That's my understanding of reading his works on reason. And yeah, the origin of any kind of conceptual knowledge or any kind of concept comes from observation. But of course, it develops into these abstract ideas that we call concepts. Now, mathematics is one example. I have a video that I talk about mathematics, how it is a language, and it operates as a language, and therefore it's a concept. It's not something that exists outside of human minds. Now, for example, let's use an example in mathematics. 2 plus 2 equals 4. Now, that is a truth. That is a true statement, and we have to learn that. We have to learn the concepts of 2, of plus, of equal, and of 4 in order to understand this proposition. And that is a true proposition, and we know that. We know that is true based on what each symbol means, what 2 means, what plus means, or what 4 means. But for example, when we are teaching children to learn mathematics, we have to use practical things in order for them to understand the concept. our capacity for abstraction is very limited. And we usually start by using actual things in the actual world that are not abstract in order to understand. So instead of going straight to a child and saying that 2 plus 2 equals 4, you're going to tell them that you have 2 apples and you add another 2 apples, and therefore you have 4 apples. That is a way for the child to understand that you're talking about 2 things that are understood to be part of the same category. When you're talking about, in the case of the 4 as well, and what the symbols actually mean, you are adding 2 apples with another 2 apples and so on. After we really understand the idea of two being part of the same category, that what 2 things is 2 unities of something, then you can get to the abstraction and to the complete conceptual idea of numbers, of mathematics. And that is when we gain conceptual knowledge about things. And then when we learn concepts, that is a complete abstraction. But I would argue that having knowledge of concepts simply works to assist you in your observation of reality. Now, one thing feeds the other. As I said, concepts are created from observation, and you also use concepts to have deeper understanding of things that you observe in nature. And observation here, I'm not simply talking about looking at something with your own eyes. I am referring to any perception that we have with our senses and perceptions that we have from machines. And machines, by the way, have a better perception than we do, and much more reliable source of data, of information about reality than we can provide. Machines are much better than us. They are not subject to biases and to mistakes and errors of perception and so on. So what I'm getting here is what it means then to say that we have knowledge about things outside of concepts or outside of our minds. And that distinction is important. So what does it mean to say, for example, that the sun is shining outside? I know the sun is shining outside. Now I can see the sun with my eyes. I can feel the light. It's bringing heat, which I can feel it. And of course, there is tons of scientific experiments that demonstrate that there is a sun out there, and the sun emits its light through photons, through wave particle, things that we call photons, whatever. I'm not a scientist. I'm not going to pretend to be one. And that's how we know, without this information, that the sun exists, and the sun is right there shining light on me right now. And I can say that I know that. Now, to say that I know that means that I am sure of that, and I don't have any reasonable doubt about this proposition that the sun is out there shining. I don't have any reason to doubt that. Now, for example, it could be the case that I am just a sim in a simulation. I'm just lines of code in a program, and I don't really exist, and the sun doesn't exist, and it's all false. That would mean, of course, that to say that I know the sun is shining is a false statement in this case, because there is no sun, there is no me, there is nothing. But I have no reason to believe that. So when we say that we know something, we are saying that we have certainty about whatever it is, and we have no good reason to doubt it. But the thing is, there is always a possibility for mistake. There is always a possibility to be wrong. There is always a possibility that you are incurring in false reasoning, or that simply there is information about reality that you are not aware of. So when we say we know something with certainty, or that we are absolutely sure about something, it simply says that according to our own epistemology, to our own methodology of inquiring truth propositions, we have no reason to believe that this belief that we have is false. But my issue, for example, with the God claim is there is no good evidence to conclude that there is such thing as a God. Now, we know there is a concept of God. The concept of God does exist, of course. Without it, I wouldn't even be talking about God. But the thing is, knowledge about the concept doesn't tell us anything about knowledge of the outside world. Now, if there is a God claimed by religions, I'm not talking about the deist God, which I also have issues with, but talking about the God of religions, the God that intervenes in the world. That God, when it intervenes with the world, it should leave some kind of trace evidence, and we simply don't see it. No one has met the scientific criteria, which is the criteria that I, for example, use to believe in something and to say that I have knowledge of something is, or the skeptic criteria would be better, which is the same as the scientific methodology. But anyway, the point is, no one has given enough evidence to prove to others that they know it, that they know that there is a thing outside that is compatible to this concept of God that we have. And that's why I am an atheist, and there are so many like myself that this criteria hasn't been met. Now, someone might say that they know God in their heart, and I really don't question that they believe that. That might be a true belief that they have, and I don't question that. But it doesn't say knowing God in your heart doesn't say anything about being an actual being in the actual world that we can call a God. No evidence for such being has ever been provided, has ever been found. And that's why I keep saying there is no God. And again, I did another session. It's been about 12 minutes now that I've been talking. And as the challenge goes, I challenge God to provide any evidence during this time. He hasn't done so. This is the seventh week I'm doing it. And so far, no God. And I will continue to do it until I die, probably, or as long as I can, because I want to have this archive showing to people, to future generations, that I tried. As Bertrand Russell say, God does a really good job in hiding. Why? When Bertrand Russell was asked what he would tell God if he ever met him, is, well, why did he take so much pain into hiding himself? Now I'm here asking him to reveal himself. He doesn't. And I say he won't, because he doesn't exist. Another week where I get to that conclusion. I've been Sarah Michel. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Cheers.